Nothing like a good old cup of lore to start your day. Lore. What is lore? Well, if you're asking that question, you probably have a significant other and go outside often. And if that's the case, why are you here? Okay, but seriously, lore is the story outside of the story. World building. The greater concepts that make whatever fictional world you're enjoying tick. Whether that be incredibly dense and in-depth storytelling chronicling the history of the Second Siege of Gondor in the Third Era, or something as simple as Glupshido was at the Battle of Poop Fart in 39 BBY. However, in video games, creating lore is a much more in-depth process. There's this level of interactivity and audience discovery that isn't there in movies or TV. So today, we're gonna take a look at 3 different examples of video game lore. One that gets it right, one that gets it wrong, and one that's a little bit messy. Or the good, the bad, and the ugly. Welcome everybody to Tryin Maiden. My name is Tryin, and if you like what you see, you should like and subscribe. If there's any game that never fails to put a smile on my face, it's Skyrim. It's one of the first games to ignite my love for gaming, and it still stands the test of time as a game that I'll always come back to. One of the main reasons as to why this game captured my imagination so well is its lore. Lore is one of the few things that Bethesda is objectively amazing at. The world of the Elder Scrolls is so deep and vast, but why is it so good? Disregarding the obvious influence from Lord of the Rings and Dungeons & Dragons, most of the stories told in this universe are wholly original. So on the baseline, that's one of the reasons. A lot of the greater concepts of this universe, like the specific identities of the Divines, a lot of the parts of the Khajiit, the idea of the Dragonborn, all of these are completely new. But if I were to just read these things on paper, I feel like that wouldn't be enough. If someone handed me an essay about this universe, I would probably get bored within an hour. And this is where the Elder Scrolls' main advantage comes in, and it's the central advantage of video game lore as a whole. The player gets to experience it. It takes the concept of show don't tell to its absolute limit. The Nordic ruins scattered across Skyrim's diverse landscape pique the player's curiosity. It clues them into a greater story, one of a civilization that once thrived here but is now nothing but empty temples and filled graveyards. Yeah, you can go and read a book about exactly what happened, but experiencing it, seeing the ruins for yourself, it's an unparalleled form of storytelling. It's the main reason why video game lore is so effective. It prioritizes experience over exposition. A big gripe that I have with a lot of science fiction or fantasy movies is the over-reliance on exposition. Like, I love the Star Wars prequels as much as the next guy, but I don't want to be told all of the struggles of the galaxy. I want to see it. And video games accomplish that twofold. Of course, you can find exposition in areas. There usually needs to be some form of exposition in a story, but a majority of video game storytelling is designed around an experience, some kind of level or mission for the player to complete, so there's no need for a lot of exposition. In short, that's what makes video game lore good. Number 1, it has an original concept that's quite strong, and 2, it prioritizes experience over exposition. So what happens when a video game gets this wrong? Well, you get Fortnite. Look, I'm gonna be totally honest. Fortnite has terrible lore. It's complicated, it's overstuffed, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. In the early days, the story was totally fine. There was just enough to propel us forward into the next season. The live events were actual events, huge things that completely changed the map going forward. And now they're just kind of there. But the actual stuff that happens in the game isn't where my problems with Fortnite's lore lie. It's actually the solution to fixing their lore. I am of the belief that video game lore should be largely contained within its own medium. Now, there should be some exceptions if someone has a really good idea for a book or a TV show, but in those cases, the media should be strictly supplemental. But in Fortnite, legitimately important plot elements are being safeguarded behind a comic series. Want to know what this Batman 0-point skin is all about? Buy this $30 comic book. Want to know the actual backstory upon which all of our seasonal changes and live events are built upon? Buy this $30 comic book. But why does this matter? Well, like I said earlier, the main thing that makes a video game's lore great is experience over exposition, showing rather than telling. And Fortnite is doing nothing but telling. I know the item shop has basically become a giant ad, but I didn't expect the live events that made gaming history would also become ads for comic books of all things. Nowadays, I'm very appreciative of the direction that Fortnite's taking in terms of its story, just enough to bridge the gaps between seasons. But for basic concepts to be locked behind a paywall is just not great. But very in character for Fortnite, I must say. And I could forgive these ideas if the story in those comics was good, but they just kinda aren't. The idea of a multiversal collision with characters from every IP imaginable duking it out in one battleground is fantastic. and is the exact same idea found in the kids who can't decide what toy they want to play with, so they just dump out the whole bucket and play with them all. Now, I like the whole toy box come to life concept, and it is super surreal seeing it play out. Cough, cough, you should go watch the video I made on exactly this. It's very good, cough, cough. But Fortnite's lore leaves me wanting a whole lot more from it. Just more originality, like Chapter 1. And while this is the direction that Chapter 5's story has largely taken, they're still making Dr. Doom the big bad of the whole thing. So Fortnite's lore doesn't work because it doesn't have that strong of a concept. And essential story elements, let alone world building, are told to you, rather than being available for you to experience. Alright, so we've covered what works and what doesn't. A good example and a bad example. So I very quickly wanted to talk a video game that gets its lore right, but also doesn't really.
Five Nights at Freddy's. That's where I wanna go.
Full transparency here, I have never played a second of a FNAF game. Actually, if you want to see me play one for the first time, $1 a month, I do extra videos, and today's is just that. And you know, it helps out the channel like a ton. Anyway, for some strange reason, FNAF's lore has really gotten me interested. The fact that people are still trying to solve it after 10 years is a testament to just how complex this lore is. But it's also a testament to how complex this lore is. FNAF's lore is ever expanding and gets really messy really quickly. From a whole myriad of books that matter but also kinda don't, to a survival logbook that shouldn't matter but really does, there's a lot of additional content that subtracts from the game's lore to me. Similarly to Fortnite, the game isn't self-contained, and while in the case of the book series and, you know, the movie.
Some people say that, but you know, it's just a theory.
What was this? I can totally understand why those were made. Original stories that just so happen to take place in that universe. They don't take away from the greater lore and they add to them. But in the case of that survival logbook that I mentioned like 30 seconds ago, there's some pretty huge story elements like the names of some of the missing children that are absent from the games. But I can forgive it because this game absolutely nails its experience. Figuring out this story for yourself is amazing, I think. With nothing but breadcrumbs to go off of, it's up to the player to create this bigger picture of a story and decode what really happened. What was the bite of 87? Why do the animatronics get a little quirky at night? All that jazz. And yeah, the game doesn't present this information very clearly, but while that's FNAF's vice, it's also its strength. So FNAF isn't ugly because it's somehow worse than all these other things, it's just a little bit messy. But what it nails, oh does it nail. Lore is ever important, ever present, and rarely good. It's a way to expand a universe beyond the confines of a single book, game, movie, or show. Getting it right is incredibly vital to a game's world, and prioritizing an experience is something that sets video game lore apart from any other medium out there. And to me, that makes them all the more special. And that's that. I wanted to thank each and every one of you for watching, and hey, if you enjoy intellectual discussions about video games, then be sure to subscribe. I want to shout out my big gamers, Pie and the Sheep, Jay Raymond, and the Chess team. Thank you guys so much, it really does mean the most, and I'll see all y'all next time. Peace!